My wife's affair exposed the shocking revenge that changed everything. My name is David Turner, and I'm a 32-year-old marketing manager at a prominent tech firm in San Francisco. My life had always seemed picture perfect. I had a beautiful home, a promising career, and most importantly, a wonderful wife named Rachel, a 30-year-old freelance graphic designer with an eye for detail and a talent for making everything around her beautiful. Together, we shared 6 incredible years of marriage, filled with love, laughter, and the occasional disagreement. But everything changed one fateful Friday evening when I stumbled upon the truth that shattered my world. It started out like any other day. I wrapped up work, excited to spend a cozy evening with Rachel. We had planned a movie night, complete with popcorn and our favorite snacks. I arrived home early, anticipating the joy of seeing her smile as I walked through the door. But when I stepped inside, the air was thick with an unfamiliar tension. The house was too quiet. "Rachel?" I called out, expecting her to come bounding down the stairs, her hair slightly tousled and a playful smile lighting up her face. Instead, I heard nothing. My heart raced as I made my way toward the living room, where I noticed Rachel's phone lying face down on the coffee table. A chill ran down my spine as I picked it up, instinctively feeling that something was off. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but curiosity gnawed at me. I flipped the phone over and saw a message from a man named Mike, a name I had never heard before. My hands trembled as I opened the conversation. My heart sank as I read the exchanges. The messages were flirtatious, filled with inside jokes and hints of clandestine meetings. My stomach turned as I realized I was reading what could only be described as a confession of betrayal. I felt as though I had been punched in the gut. Rage and hurt boiled inside me, but I couldn't confront her without proof. I needed more than just messages to back up my claims. So, I decided to wait for her return. When Rachel finally walked in an hour later, her demeanor was carefree, completely unaware of the storm brewing within me. She noticed my silence and smiled, asking if I was okay. "I just missed you," I said, forcing a smile as my heart raced. I watched her every move, searching for any signs of guilt. "Let's get this movie night started," she said, oblivious to the chaos in my mind. We settled on the couch, but I couldn't focus on the film. Every joke, every laugh felt hollow. As the credits rolled, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to do. "Rachel," I began, my voice trembling, "I found something on your phone." Her smile faded, replaced by a look of confusion that quickly morphed into one of panic. I pulled up the messages, the words burning my eyes as I handed her the phone. The silence was deafening. "David, I can explain," she stammered, her voice rising in pitch. "It's not what it looks like." "Then what is it?" I shot back, trying to contain the mix of anger and betrayal coursing through me. I was going to tell you. It was a mistake." Her eyes pleaded with me, but I felt a disconnect, a chasm of hurt that couldn't be bridged with words. I stood there, heartbroken, watching the woman I loved squirm under the weight of her lies. "Who is he?" I demanded, my voice low and dangerous. "Mike is just a friend from art school. We were just," she started, but I cut her off. "A friend?" I snapped. "You're texting him like he's your lover, Rachel. You can't just throw that word around." The argument escalated, voices rising as we exchanged accusations and painful truths. I felt like I was losing my mind. This wasn't the woman I married, the woman who promised to stand by me through thick and thin. As the hours dragged on, the fight morphed into a long night filled with tears, anger, and heartbreak. Rachel begged for my forgiveness, her sobs echoing through the house. I was torn between the overwhelming urge to comfort her and the burning desire to walk away from the shattered remnants of our marriage. In the days that followed, we fell into a strange routine. Rachel insisted on going to couples therapy, claiming she wanted to rebuild our marriage. I could hardly look at her, yet a part of me held on to the hope that maybe she could change, that I could forgive her. But my gut screamed that something deeper was at play. As we sat in therapy sessions, Rachel appeared remorseful, shedding tears and expressing her desire to make things right. But behind her sweet facade, I sensed a dark undercurrent. Something felt off, too calculated, too rehearsed. It was as if she was playing a part, acting her way through this, while I was left drowning in a sea of uncertainty. Little did I know, Rachel had her own plans brewing beneath the surface. While I was trying to salvage our marriage, she was meticulously preparing for a battle I never saw coming. And that's where the story takes a shocking turn, an outrageous twist that would ultimately shatter everything I thought I knew about my wife and our life together. A week had passed since the confrontation, and I found myself in the therapy room again, sitting across from Rachel and our therapist, Dr. Stevens, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a calming demeanor. Rachel was dressed in a soft blue sweater that made her look innocent, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more going on beneath her composed surface. Each session felt like an act, with Rachel playing the part of the remorseful wife while I was the audience trying to decipher the truth hidden in her words. "David, it's important to remember that healing takes time," Dr. Stevens advised, her voice soothing. "Rachel, can you share how you've been feeling since the incident?" Rachel took a deep breath, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I feel terrible, Dr. Stevens. I never meant to hurt David. I've realized how much I love him and how foolish I was to jeopardize our marriage." Her voice cracked, and I almost believed her. "Almost. Why did you reach out to Mike in the first place?" I pressed, my frustration bubbling over. "What were you looking for?" "I was lonely," she replied, looking down at her lap, a tremor in her voice. "I thought David was too consumed with work to notice me anymore." "Lonely?" I echoed incredulously. "You had me, Rachel. We had a life together. If you felt neglected, you should have talked to me." She looked up, her eyes wide and wounded. "I know that now. I'm sorry. I want to make it work." But just as I was about to respond, a sudden notification pinged from Rachel's phone, which she had placed face down on the coffee table. Dr. Stevens noticed and glanced at it before I could stop her. "Rachel, you should probably turn your phone off during our sessions," she suggested gently. Rachel quickly grabbed her phone, her face flushing. "Sorry, it was just a message from a friend." "From Mike?" I shot back, feeling the tension rise. "No, she hesitated, clearly caught off guard. "It's just someone from the art community." I narrowed my eyes. Something was off. I'd seen enough of Rachel's reactions to know when she was hiding something. But what? Just when I thought I'd been given a glimpse into her emotional turmoil, I felt the ground shift beneath me as she opened her mouth to speak. "Actually, there's something I need to confess," Rachel said, her voice steadying as she turned her gaze back to Dr. Stevens. "I've been seeing someone else, but only in therapy. I think it's time for me to be honest." My heart raced. Had she just confessed to another affair? Did I really hear her say she was seeing someone? My mind spiraled. "What do you mean, seeing someone else?" I asked, barely able to contain my disbelief. "I mean, I've been meeting with a therapist for individual sessions, and I've found it incredibly helpful," she clarified, her tone resolute. "But I didn't want you to think I was doing this alone. I didn't want to burden you with my feelings." Burden? She'd just revealed her betrayal, and now I was the one being burdened by her hidden confessions. "Rachel, this isn't about therapy. This is about you lying to me again. Are you really trying to gaslight me?" But just as I was ready to storm out, Rachel leaned forward, her expression shifting to something more calculating. "David, listen. I've been through a lot. I'm working on myself, but it's hard when I feel like I'm under constant scrutiny. It's overwhelming." Before I could respond, she continued, her voice lowering. "What if I told you that I've been planning something to help us both?" "What do you mean?" My pulse quickened as I considered the implications. "I want us to go to a retreat together," she proposed, eyes sparkling with what I could only describe as a sinister glimmer. "A place where we can work on our marriage, where you can find it in your heart to forgive me completely. No distractions, just the two of us." I hesitated, feeling an unsettling mix of hope and dread. "And what do you get out of this?" I asked, leaning back in my chair, crossing my arms defensively. "David," she said softly, her voice dropping to a whisper, "I genuinely want to fix this. I need you to trust me." Trust her? Wasn't that what got me into this mess in the first place? But there was a flicker of hope deep within me that maybe, just maybe, this was a chance to rebuild what had been broken. As we left the therapy session, Rachel squeezed my hand, her smile returning. "I promise you, this is going to work. You'll see." That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. The walls felt like they were closing in around me, and the shadows of my doubts danced on the ceiling. Despite everything, I found myself considering her offer. A retreat could be a fresh start, or maybe it was just another layer of her deception. The next morning, I woke up to find Rachel in the kitchen, pouring herself a cup of coffee, her demeanor calm and collected. I walked in, hoping to break the ice. "So, have you thought more about the retreat?" Rachel smiled, her expression serene. "I have, and I think we should do it soon. There's something I need to show you." "What is it?" My curiosity piqued. She paused for a moment, the glint in her eye growing sharper. "Just something I've been working on. I want you to see it." And with that, Rachel opened her laptop, and my stomach dropped as she revealed an elaborate spreadsheet filled with financial information, our bank statements, her art commissions, and her personal expenses. "Rachel, what's all this?" I asked, my heart pounding. "I'm just preparing for our future, David," she said, her voice smooth. If we're going to work on us, I need to make sure we're financially secure. My mind raced. Why was she so focused on finances? Was this just part of her act? The twist hit me hard. This wasn't just about our marriage. Rachel was meticulously planning something else, and I had no idea what it was. Little did I know, she was gathering evidence, preparing for a legal strike that would leave me reeling. I suddenly felt a sense of impending doom wash over me. My wife was not only trying to play the role of a remorseful partner, she was plotting something far more sinister, and I was oblivious to the true extent of her betrayal. The feeling of betrayal morphed into an overwhelming sense of urgency. I had to find out what Rachel was really up to, and fast. The next step would be my own, and it was time to prepare for the inevitable battle ahead. After Rachel revealed her meticulously organized financial spreadsheet, I felt a chill run down my spine. The look in her eyes, a blend of calculated determination and something darker, left me feeling exposed. I was determined not to let her manipulate me further. I had to turn the tables and figure out her real intentions. That night, as I lay in bed next to her, pretending to sleep, my mind raced with thoughts. Rachel was clearly up to something, and I needed to prepare for whatever she was planning. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was not only gathering financial documents but also plotting her own revenge against me for the affair. My heart raced as I envisioned all the ways I could fight back. It was time to start gathering my own intel. Step 1: Gather evidence. The next day, I decided to dig deeper. I needed to collect my own set of documents, preferably anything that could be useful in the event of a divorce. If Rachel thought she could play the victim while plotting behind my back, she was sorely mistaken. I went to my office and spent hours printing out copies of our shared assets, bank statements, and any correspondence that could potentially support my case. I took special care to hide these documents in a separate folder on my laptop, naming it innocuously to avoid suspicion. Then came the next step: I needed to record her conversations. As unethical as it felt, I knew it was crucial. So I bought a small, inconspicuous voice recorder and slipped it into my jacket pocket whenever I was near Rachel. I had to know what she was really thinking and what she might be saying when she thought I wasn't around. Step 2: Set up surveillance. As I kept the facade of a devoted husband, I also became my own secret investigator. I began to notice Rachel's habits. She would often slip away to the art community events, claiming to meet with fellow artists or attend gallery openings. I decided to follow her one night, using my phone to track her movements. I parked a few blocks away from our house and waited, my heart pounding with a mix of anxiety and adrenaline. After a short while, Rachel emerged, dressed impeccable in a fitted black dress that hugged her figure perfectly, looking as if she were ready for a night on the town. I followed her at a distance, careful not to be seen. The unease in my gut twisted tighter as I realized she was headed toward the Velvet Lounge, a bar known for its secrecy and upscale clientele. Step 3: The confrontation. Inside, I kept my distance, observing her from a corner table. She mingled with a group of people, her laughter echoing like music in the air. My heart sank when I spotted Mike, the man with whom she'd had the affair, laughing animatedly beside her. What was happening here? Did they plan to meet? I felt rage bubbling inside me as I quietly grabbed my phone to record them. I needed evidence, proof that Rachel hadn't changed and that her desire to work on our marriage was just another act. I pressed record just as Rachel leaned in close to Mike, whispering something that made him throw his head back in laughter. My blood boiled, and I almost stood up to confront them, but I forced myself to stay put. I couldn't reveal my hand, yet I had to gather more evidence. Step 4: The revelation. As the night wore on, I saw Rachel pull out her phone and text someone. My heart raced as I caught a glimpse of the screen. It read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, babe. Let's keep this between us." I almost shouted. She was still seeing Mike. I quickly saved the recording and slipped out of the bar, heart pounding with a mix of fury and adrenaline. I now had undeniable proof of her betrayal, but there was still more to do. I needed to devise a plan that would put Rachel in a position where she couldn't twist the narrative against me. It was time to turn the tables and make her feel the consequences of her actions. Step 5: The master plan. Over the next few days, I meticulously planned my revenge. I started documenting everything: every late night, every suspicious text, every time she left the house under the guise of attending an art event. I would present this evidence to Dr. Stevens during our next therapy session, ensuring she could not hide behind her manipulations. I reached out to a lawyer, Lisa, who specialized in family law. I explained my situation and shared my recordings. Lisa listened intently, nodding as she took notes. "You've got a strong case, David. With the evidence you've collected, we can negotiate a favorable settlement." This will also help in gaining custody of your children if it comes to that. I felt a surge of empowerment. I wasn't the only one capable of playing the game. I was ready to turn Rachel's betrayal into my leverage. As I prepared for our next therapy session, I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. Little did Rachel know that while she thought she was setting the stage for her grand performance of forgiveness and healing, I was ready to shatter that illusion completely. The next session would change everything, and I was ready to confront her. The end of deceit. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't help but smile. The tables were turning, and Rachel would soon discover that her games would cost her far more than she anticipated. The stakes were high, but I was determined to come out on top. Tomorrow would be the day I unveiled the truth, and there was no turning back now. The therapy session felt like a ticking time bomb, each second heavy with the tension that enveloped us. I sat in Dr. Stevens' office, trying to appear calm, but inside, my heart raced with anticipation. I had prepared for this moment meticulously, ready to lay bare the truth and turn Rachel's facade of forgiveness into a shambles. Rachel walked in, her demeanor confident, wearing that same fitted black dress she had donned the night she met Mike. She smiled at me, a charming mask of innocence. Little did she know, I was armed with everything I needed to expose her duplicity. Setting the stage, Dr. Stevens greeted us with his usual warmth, his eyes flickering between us as he sensed the underlying tension. "I'm glad you both made it. Today, let's focus on communication and rebuilding trust." "Absolutely," I replied, my voice steady. Trust is crucial in any relationship. I locked eyes with Rachel, who was sitting across from me, an unsettling smirk on her face. "Great. So why don't we start with how you both feel about the progress since our last session?" Dr. Stevens suggested. Rachel seized the opportunity. "I feel like we've made a lot of progress," she said, her voice laced with sincerity. "David is working hard on his trust issues, and I'm committed to making this work." I could barely suppress a smile. This was her game, but I had no intention of playing by her rules. I reached into my briefcase, heart pounding, and pulled out a folder. "Actually, Dr. Stevens, I'd like to address a few things about progress too." The reveal. The room fell silent, tension crackling in the air. Rachel's eyes widened slightly, and I could see the moment her confidence began to falter. "What do you mean?" she asked, feigning ignorance. "Let me show you," I said, flipping open the folder and revealing printed emails, text messages, and my voice recordings. "This is evidence of your ongoing communication with Mike after you claimed to want to work on our marriage." Dr. Stevens raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "Evidence of what exactly?" "Evidence of betrayal," I said, my voice firm. I handed Dr. Stevens the transcripts of my recordings, which detailed Rachel's flirtations and discussions about future meetings with Mike. "This is from the night you went to the Velvet Lounge." As Dr. Stevens began reading, Rachel's face transformed. Shock morphed into anger, and I watched as she struggled to maintain her composure. "David, how could you do this? You're violating my privacy," she shouted, but the panic in her voice was unmistakable. Turning the tables, Dr. Stevens looked up, his expression a mix of surprise and concern. "Rachel, this is serious. If David has proof of infidelity, it changes the dynamic significantly. Trust is foundational to any relationship." Rachel's eyes flared with indignation. "You can't believe him. He's just trying to make me look bad because he's the one who cheated." But I was ready for this. "Actually, Rachel, you're right. I did cheat, once, but I've owned up to it. You, on the other hand, have been hiding your betrayal behind a veil of false sincerity." With each word, I felt more empowered, like a weight lifting from my shoulders. Dr. Stevens watched us, his expression serious. "Rachel, if there's any truth to these claims, it complicates the therapy process. David, have you considered what you want moving forward?" I took a breath, feeling the energy shift in the room. "I want to reclaim my life and my dignity. I want the truth to be heard, and I want to protect my children from this deception." The twist. Just when I thought Rachel was cornered, she pulled a card I didn't see coming. "You think this is all about Mike," she said, her voice suddenly cold. "I've been talking to him, sure, but do you want to know who else I've been seeing? Your brother, Andrew." The room went quiet, the air thick with disbelief. I felt the blood drain from my face. Andrew, my own flesh and blood? The brother I had confided in during my darkest days? Rachel continued, her voice laced with venom. "He's been my shoulder to cry on while you've been busy betraying me. We've grown close, David. Closer than you and I ever were." Crumbling walls. The shock of her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I struggled to keep my composure, but the betrayal cut deep. My brother, had crossed a line that felt unforgivable. "You're lying," I managed to choke out, but a small part of me feared the truth. "I'm not. Ask him." I have texts to prove it. You were so busy drowning in your guilt that you didn't even notice the people around you were plotting your downfall, she spat, a triumphant glint in her eye. Dr. Stevens intervened, sensing the rising tension. Rachel, let's focus on your feelings and how this affects the marriage. David, what do you want to do about Andrew? I felt an overwhelming sense of betrayal flood through me. I'll deal with Andrew later, I replied, my voice steely. Right now, we're addressing the reality of your choices, Rachel. I will not let your lies ruin me any further. The aftermath. The session ended with Rachel storming out, her composure shattered. I felt a rush of victory but also an overwhelming sense of betrayal. My brother was involved in this chaos too. As I walked out of Dr. Stevens' office, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. My entire world felt upside down. My marriage was unraveling, my family ties were fraying, and I had to prepare for whatever Rachel had planned next. But one thing was clear, this was just the beginning. Rachel thought she could manipulate me, but I was ready for her games. The revenge had only just begun, and I would ensure that she understood the true consequences of her actions. As I sat in my car, I knew I had to confront Andrew. The betrayal cut deeper than I could ever have imagined, and I needed answers. The web of deceit was growing thicker, and I was determined to cut through it, no matter the cost. The days following the therapy session felt like a surreal blur. I had unleashed a storm, and now I was left to deal with the debris. Rachel's betrayal with Mike was bad enough, but the thought of my brother Andrew involved felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in a twisted soap opera, and I was the unwilling star. Confronting Andrew. I decided to confront Andrew head-on. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't let him slink away unchallenged. He was my brother, but the betrayal cut too deep for forgiveness to come easily. I found him at a bar we used to frequent, sitting at a corner table nursing a whiskey. He looked up as I approached, surprise flickering across his face. David. Hey, what's up? Save it, I said, my voice low but steady. We need to talk. I slid into the chair opposite him, the weight of the conversation heavy between us. I know about you and Rachel, I said bluntly, watching as his expression morphed from surprise to confusion and then to guilt. Wait, what? She told you something? He stammered, avoiding my gaze. She didn't need to tell me, I heard it from her own mouth during our therapy session, I replied, my heart pounding. How could you do this to me, Andrew? He ran a hand through his hair, the shame evident on his face. I didn't mean for it to happen. She was vulnerable, and I was just what? Being a good brother, I interrupted, anger boiling over. You were supposed to have my back, not my wife's. The turning point. Andrew sighed, his eyes downcast. I'm sorry, man. I really am. But you've been so consumed with your own issues that you didn't even notice how she was struggling. She needed someone to talk to, and I was there for her. Being there for her doesn't mean getting involved, I snapped. You've crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. This isn't just about the affair anymore, it's about trust, family trust. He looked genuinely remorseful, but the damage was done. I messed up, I get it. But Rachel and I never meant for it to go this far. I thought you two were done. You thought wrong. I leaned back, shaking my head. I'm still her husband. I've been fighting for our marriage, even after everything. But now I don't know what to think. Decisions made. As I walked out of the bar, I felt a strange mix of anger and sadness. I didn't know if I could ever trust Andrew again. The weight of betrayal had altered our relationship forever. I needed to make some tough choices, not only regarding Rachel but also my brother. That night, I sat down with Lisa, my lawyer. I need to discuss my options moving forward, I told her, my resolve hardening. I can't let Rachel get away with what she's done, and I need to ensure that my children are protected. Lisa listened carefully, nodding. With the evidence you've gathered and your understanding of her manipulation, we can craft a solid case. But you need to be prepared for a potential legal battle, especially since there's the issue of custody. I'm ready for that, I replied, feeling a sense of purpose. I'll fight tooth and nail for my kids. Rachel's actions have consequences, and I won't let her drag them into this mess. The final confrontation. I decided it was time for a final confrontation with Rachel. I needed to reclaim my narrative and ensure she understood the full extent of her actions. I arranged to meet her at a nearby cafe, where we had spent countless afternoons together. When Rachel arrived, she wore a worried expression, clearly shaken from the fallout of our last session. I could see she was trying to maintain her composure, but the cracks were starting to show. David, we need to talk about what happened. Stop, I cut her off, raising a hand. I don't want to hear any more of your excuses. I know about your affair with Mike and your betrayal with Andrew. You've been manipulating this entire situation for your benefit. Her face turned pale, eyes darting nervously. You can't possibly think I don't think, Rachel. I know. I leaned in, my voice low but firm. You need to understand that there are consequences for your actions. I'm done playing your games. The legal battle. As we spoke, I could see the fear creeping into her eyes. I laid out my plans, making it clear that I was consulting with my lawyer and was ready to take legal action. I will not allow you to take my children or tarnish my name without a fight, I stated, my voice resolute. I thought we could work on this together, she pleaded, desperation seeping into her tone. We can fix things. Fix things? I echoed, incredulous. You've shattered the foundation of our marriage. There's nothing left to fix. I refuse to be a pawn in your game any longer. I'm taking control of my life back. Moving forward. Rachel's face twisted in anger and frustration, but I could see the realization dawn on her. The power she thought she held was slipping away. I stood up, ready to leave. I'm filing for divorce, Rachel. You can either continue this charade or face the truth of your actions. The choice is yours. As I walked away from that cafe, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. I had taken back my power. The revenge I had meticulously planned was not just about making Rachel pay, it was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and most importantly, my children. The aftermath unfolds. In the weeks that followed, the legal proceedings began. The evidence I had collected served as a strong foundation for my case. Rachel's attempts to spin her narrative fell flat as the truth emerged, exposing her manipulations and infidelities. Andrew tried to reach out, but I couldn't bring myself to face him. The rift between us felt insurmountable, and I had to prioritize my own healing. My children became my focus, and I made it a point to shield them from the chaos as best as I could. I wanted to be the stable force in their lives, a stark contrast to the turmoil Rachel had created. Closure and new beginnings. As I moved forward, I began to rediscover myself outside of the marriage. I invested more time in my career and reconnected with friends. I learned that I could find joy again, even amidst the wreckage of my past. Rachel continued to fight, but she was no longer the formidable opponent I once thought she was. I was ready for whatever came next, confident that I would emerge victorious. In the end, I had turned the tables. I had reclaimed my life, my family, and my self-respect. Rachel thought she could play me, but in the end, she had unwittingly strengthened my resolve. The fake forgiveness she sought would never be enough, and I was ready to embrace my future without her, one that promised to be brighter, stronger, and filled with newfound freedom. As I drove home one evening, the sunset painting the sky in vibrant hues, I felt a surge of hope. I was ready to build a new life, one where I was no longer defined by betrayal but by resilience and strength.